The mystery of the shark arm case. The mysterious incident, long remembered as the shark arm case, remains one of Australia's most unsettling and extraordinary investigations. It began in the year 1935, when the Coogee Aquarium and swimming baths in Sydney struggled to survive the financial strain caused by the Great Depression. The owner, Bert Hobson, worked tirelessly to keep the attraction open, but dwindling attendance and widespread hardship made it difficult to maintain the business. In an effort to revive public interest, Hobson and his son captured an enormous 14-foot, 1-ton tiger shark off the coast and proudly placed it inside their pool as a new spectacle for visitors. At the time, Sydney had experienced several shark attacks, heightening both fear and fascination among the public. Hobson believed that displaying the massive creature would offer reassurance and entertainment, drawing crowds who wished to see one of the ocean's most formidable predators up close. For nearly a week, the shark attracted families and curious onlookers, giving Hobson hope that his business might finally recover. However, what happened next would transform the aquarium into the center of a national mystery. Before a crowd of spectators, the tiger shark began thrashing violently, as if in distress. Moments later, it vomited several items, including a rat, a bird, and, most shocking of all, a human arm. The scene horrified witnesses and immediately prompted Hobson to alert authorities. The arm, which had been cleanly severed, bore a distinctive tattoo of 2 boxers. Investigators quickly moved in, and to ensure no additional evidence remained inside the shark, the animal was later put down and examined. No other human remains were found. Using fingerprint technology, the arm was identified as belonging to 45-year-old Jimmy Smith, a man who had vanished on the 7th of April, 1935. His identity introduced a complex and suspicious background that forced investigators to delve into Sydney's criminal underworld. Their attention soon turned to Reginald William Lloyd Holmes, a well-connected businessman involved in both legitimate boat-building operations and various smuggling ventures. Holmes and Smith had been partners in numerous insurance schemes, including the deliberate sinking of an over-insured vessel called the Pathfinder in 1934. It was later uncovered that Smith and Holmes had also collaborated with Patrick Francis Brady, a former serviceman with a record for forgery. Together, Smith and Brady had cashed forged checks using signatures stolen from Holmes's associates. Tension grew within the group, and investigators discovered that Smith had begun using these activities as leverage to pressure Holmes. As authorities pieced together the connections between the 3 men, the final sighting of Jimmy Smith became especially important. He had been seen at the Cecil Hotel in southern Sydney, drinking and playing cards with Brady. Although Smith had told his wife he planned to go fishing, he instead spent the day with Brady, whose sudden involvement struck investigators as suspicious. Brady had also rented a small cottage during the exact period in which Smith vanished, raising further concern. Police came to believe that Jimmy Smith met his end inside that cottage, though the exact circumstances remain unknown, and the remainder of his body has never been recovered. Despite pursuing Holmes and Brady, evidence proved difficult to secure, leaving significant aspects of the case unresolved. What began as an attempt to save a struggling aquarium unexpectedly revealed a disturbing network of deceit, fraud, and silent conflict within Sydney's criminal circles. The shark arm case endures as one of Australia's most baffling true mysteries, a chilling blend of coincidence, crime, and unanswered questions that continues to fascinate historians and investigators nearly a century later. The mystery of Christina Kettlewell. The mysterious passing of 22-year-old Christina Kettlewell remains one of Canada's most unsettling and unresolved cases, a story marked by confusion, conflicting timelines, and a haunting sense of unanswered questions. On the 20th of May, 1947, Christina's body was discovered only 150 feet from the honeymoon cottage she had shared with her new husband. She was found lying in a shallow patch of river water, barely 9 inches deep, an image that stunned both investigators and the local community. The strange circumstances surrounding her final days transformed what should have been a joyous time into one of the most baffling mysteries of the era. Christina had eloped with 26-year-old war veteran John Ray Jack Kettlewell just days earlier, on the 12th of May. The pair had known each other for 3 years, and although their future appeared bright, the dynamics within their close circle were far from ordinary. A crucial presence in their lives was 28-year-old professional ballroom dancer and Italian immigrant Ronald Barry. Friends and acquaintances noted that the three spent an unusual amount of time together, and Ronald's involvement in their marriage appeared to extend far beyond that of a casual friend. After exchanging vows, Christina and Jack spent the first days of their honeymoon in a rented Toronto apartment. Strangely, Ronald accompanied them throughout this period, joining them for meals, outings, and daily activities. On the 17th of May, the trio travelled to Ronald's isolated cottage in Seven Falls, accessible only by boat. Once there, Christina's behaviour began to shift dramatically. She alternated between sudden bouts of tears and long moments of silence, appearing unlike her usual cheerful self. It was later revealed that Christina confided in Ronald, expressing uncertainty about Jack's true feelings for her. Events took a dramatic turn on the 20th of May. Christina disappeared without warning, and at nearly the same time, Ronald's cottage erupted into flames. When Ronald returned and saw the burning structure, he found Jack inside, dazed, injured, and barely conscious. Acting immediately, Ronald pulled Jack from the burning building and searched frantically for Christina, but she was nowhere to be found. The cottage collapsed into ash within an hour, leaving behind only questions and charred remnants of what was meant to be a romantic escape. Ronald ensured Jack was taken swiftly back to Seven Falls and transported to the nearest hospital for treatment. While the investigation into the fire began, an even more troubling discovery surfaced. Christina's body had been found near a boathouse along the riverbank. She had no burns, marks, or visible injuries. An autopsy revealed codeine in her stomach, yet it was determined that she had drowned. The lack of physical signs of distress, coupled with the shallow depth of the water, confused investigators. How she ended up in the river and under what circumstances remained entirely unclear. Adding further uncertainty, Major Lawrence Scarderfield, one of the first responders to the fire, stated that when he approached the river to collect water to fight the flames just hours earlier, he saw no sign of Christina's body. His statement implied that her body appeared in the water only after the initial search, creating an unsettling contradiction in the timeline. Authorities interrogated 22 individuals, including Jack and Ronald, attempting to piece together the events leading up to Christina's passing. Despite exploring multiple theories, ranging from accidental drowning to more complex scenarios involving emotional distress or outside influence, police were unable to reach a definitive conclusion. The mystery of Christina Kettlewell endures because every element of the case seems to raise more questions than answers. The mystery of Natalie Wood. The mystery surrounding the final hours of Natalie Wood remains one of the most enduring and emotionally charged cases in Hollywood history. More than 40 years have passed since her lifeless body was discovered floating in the dark waters near Catalina Island, yet the circumstances of that night continue to invite speculation, unanswered questions, and renewed investigative efforts. At the time of her passing, the renowned actress was 43 years old and celebrated for her roles in numerous films, including West Side Story. The official explanation given by authorities in 1981 was that her passing resulted from accidental drowning, influenced by her inability to swim and the presence of alcohol in her system. Despite this classification, the inconsistencies surrounding her final hours created a web of doubt that would eventually lead to the reopening of the case decades later. According to the initial findings, Natalie had spent the evening dining on Catalina Island with her husband, Robert Wagner, and her co-star Christopher Walken. The three were traveling aboard their yacht, the Splendor, for a weekend getaway. Witnesses at the restaurant described the group as noticeably intoxicated by the time they left for the evening. They returned to the yacht shortly after 10 in the evening, using the dinghy named Valiant. By Wagner's account, Natalie retired to the couple's cabin around 10:45, while he remained on deck speaking with Walken. When Wagner eventually went to the cabin to join her, he discovered that she was not there and noticed that the dinghy was missing as well. Realizing something was wrong, Wagner radioed for assistance, setting off a search effort that included the Harbour Patrol, Coast Guard, and volunteer teams. Natalie's body was discovered early the next morning by a Sheriff's Department helicopter, floating face down in the water. She was declared deceased at 7:44 in the morning. The news devastated her family and the entertainment world. Her funeral, held on the 3rd of December, drew some of the industry's most prominent figures, including Laurence Olivier, Frank Sinatra, and Gregory Peck. Wagner appeared grief-stricken, surrounded by friends, relatives, and colleagues who mourned the beloved actress. Although the authorities closed the case with an accidental ruling, many who followed the story believed that the explanation left too many gaps. Over time, rumors spread, and long-hidden accounts eventually encouraged investigators to take another look. In 2011, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the case, citing new information and changing witness statements that challenged the accuracy of the original timeline. By February 2018, several new witnesses had come forward, prompting investigators to re-evaluate the events leading up to Natalie's disappearance. Captain Christopher Bergner from the Homicide Division revealed that individuals on nearby boats had overheard events that contradicted the initial statements. Their accounts described a heated argument aboard the Splendor, followed by a woman's pleas for help that carried over the water. These witnesses had never been interviewed during the original investigation. Lieutenant John Corina, also part of the Homicide Bureau, stated that Robert Wagner was now considered a person of interest. At 88 years old, Wagner had not agreed to provide further statements, despite the department's desire to speak with him. Corina explained that the new timeline suggested that certain actions aboard the yacht occurred much later than Wagner originally claimed. Witnesses observed lights on the Splendor, heard raised voices, and reported distress calls that were not reflected in the first report submitted in 1981. During the renewed investigation, detectives interviewed individuals who encountered the group during their time on Catalina Island. Accounts indicated that emotions between Natalie and Wagner appeared strained. Alcohol consumption throughout the evening only intensified the tension. Rumors had circulated that Natalie and Walken had spent time together earlier that day, laughing and enjoying each other's company, which reportedly irritated Wagner. These emotional dynamics played an important role in understanding the atmosphere aboard the yacht. One of the most significant sources of information came from Dennis Davin, the yacht's captain, and a close family friend. Davin had been present on the Splendor that night and later revealed that Wagner had urged him and Walken to present a unified version of events. According to Davin, the argument between Wagner and Walken had actually begun earlier than originally described, and the conflict grew progressively more intense after the group returned to the yacht. In various interviews, Davin explained that he believed Natalie's disappearance was not immediate and that she had been missing for far longer than reported. He also stated that the first call for help was not made until 1:30 in the morning, almost 2 hours after witnesses on nearby boats heard cries for assistance. Another crucial witness, Marilyn Wayne, happened to be anchored just 80 feet away from the Splendor. She reported hearing a woman calling for help around 11 at night. These cries continued for nearly 30 minutes before fading. Wayne's boyfriend attempted to call the harbormaster, but he received no response. Wayne's testimony raised concerns about the delay in reporting Natalie missing, especially given that the official account claimed the authorities were notified immediately after Wagner found the cabin empty. The Sheriff's Department emphasized that the purpose of the reopened investigation was to resolve the inconsistencies in the timeline. Detectives sought to locate additional witnesses who might still have memories of that night. Lieutenant Corina stated the department wished to build as accurate a picture as possible of the final moments before Natalie entered the water. He stressed that every lead would be pursued in depth, with the intention of uncovering the truth behind the tragedy. The disappearance of Fariba Ammani. The mysterious disappearance of Fariba Ammani has gripped the hearts and minds of people around the world, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and speculation in its wake. Fariba Ammani, an Iranian-American woman, vanished without a trace on December 24, 2009, under circumstances that continue to baffle investigators and haunt her loved ones to this day. Fariba Ammani was concerned about going on a cruise with Ramiz Golshani, her partner. Her family claims that the 47-year-old only wanted to travel since the trip was paid for in advance. After the pair got home, it's claimed that Ammani was having second thoughts about the relationship. Somewhere between the Bahamas and Florida on February 29, 2012, the Canadian woman vanished from the ship. According to her boyfriend, nothing about their cruise trip looked out of the ordinary. He said to detectives that he spotted his girlfriend outside a duty-free store at around 1 in the morning. Golshani says that after going to bed, he was startled to see that Ammani had not come back to their room. Golshani informed the crew after roughly an hour of searching. Charles Kinnear, president of Celebration Cruise Lines, told news outlets that he returned to the room, went to bed, and claimed that she wasn't there when he woke up, and before deciding to come and tell them, he took some time to stroll around the ship. However, Ammani's family is adamant that she wouldn't have fallen overboard by mistake. Her sister said during an interview that she doesn't think her disappearance was accidental, adding that she couldn't have just stumbled and fallen off board. Her sister also pointed out that she didn't drink. Furthermore, Ammani's relatives disclosed to the public that she was considering ending the relationship with Golshani. Her sister said to news outlets that she believed Golshani was unfaithful to her and that he had a tendency to be quite controlling. Fariba Ammani's family continues to hold out hope for her safe return, but as time passes, the likelihood of finding answers grows increasingly slim. The disappearance of Fariba Ammani remains a haunting mystery, one that has left her loved ones grappling with uncertainty and anguish. Until concrete evidence or information comes to light, the fate of Fariba Ammani will continue to be one of the many unsolved mysteries of our time. The disappearance of Hugh Pham and Hugh Tran. The children of Hugh Pham and Hugh Tran gifted them a cruise for Mother's Day. In May 2005, they sailed on the Carnival cruise ship Destiny, and they disappeared midway between Barbados and Aruba. According to news outlets, they claim that the 49-year married couple had previously triumphed against significant adversity. In the final stages of the Vietnam War, they managed to escape their home country of Vietnam, drift aimlessly for 2 weeks in the South China Sea, and eventually make their way to the United States, where they started a new life. As their son, Michael Pham, told news outlets, they worked very hard since they came to the United States 30 years ago, retired, and lived happily in Southern California, adding that his parents deserved the cruise ship present. However, Hugh Pham, aged 71, and Hugh Tran, aged 67, disappeared off the ship on May 12, 2005. As the ship headed towards Aruba, son Michael Pham told news outlets that his parents vanished from sight, and they left very little trace. He clarified that although there was no sign of the missing pair, searchers had discovered Hugh's handbag, the book she was reading, and the sandals of both the parents. The children of the missing spouses wrote for international cruise victims, accusing Carnival Cruise Lines of being more concentrated on preparing the next day's shore activities than safeguarding important data and proof related to 2 of their missing passengers. In addition, son Michael Pham asserted that the cruise line was unhelpful, and he has recently testified before Congress over the inadequate safety procedures on cruise ships. He told news outlets that they were 2 American citizens living the happiest time of their lives, adding that neither of them had any major health issues nor any personal or financial problems, and they both vanished without a trace or witness. The mysterious disappearance of John Halford. Based on a recent ruling by the High Court, it is now presumed that a man in his 60s, who is a father of 3 and went missing after enjoying drinks on a cruise ship in Egypt, met his demise. John Halford, a resident of Milton Keynes in Buckinghamshire, found himself embarking on an unforeseen solo vacation following the challenges that arose in his 25-year-long marital relationship. High Court Judge Mr. Justice Hayden carefully examined the case during a hearing held in the Family Division of the High Court in London. This occurred when Ruth, the wife of Mr. Halford, requested a declaration of presumed demise in order to establish her legal status. The woman shed tears while presenting her case to the judge, sharing details of the challenges she faced in her marriage, particularly relating to financial issues. She explained how her husband had been planning to leave their home and seek temporary accommodation at a bed and breakfast, but mysteriously vanished before doing so. This heartbreaking situation was marked by turmoil. According to her, there was a sense of astonishment surrounding his choice to embark on the expensive expedition worth a significant £6,000 during the spring of 2011. According to the judge, there was evidence suggesting that Mr. Halford, who was known for his preference for beer, consumed 2 cocktails at a casino bar on the ship in the period leading up to midnight. This information sheds light on Mr. Halford's beverage choices and sets the context for his actions. Following his sudden departure, the individual in question mysteriously vanished, leaving behind a plethora of personal belongings within the confines of his cabin. As of right now, his whereabouts remains a mystery. The mysterious disappearance of Rebecca Coriam. The disappearance of Rebecca Coriam, a young British cruise ship staffer from the Disney Wonder on March 22, 2011, remains a mystery to the authorities. Rebecca Coriam, aged 24, vanished out of sight on March 22, 2011. The popularity and revenue of the cruise business have grown steadily since the 1980s, and travelers have been drawn to large, floating, self-sufficient cities that are bound to far-off places for several decades, and there are no signs that this attraction is going away. Rebecca Coriam was a care worker on the Disney Wonder cruise ship when she vanished. Coriam was last seen on CCTV footage. She was dressed in men's clothing, acting extremely agitated, and conversing on an internal phone line in the crew lounge. She was never seen or heard from again after the call ended. Disney employees were notified to search the ship for Coriam when she failed to show up for her morning shift, but they were unable to find her. Then, in an attempt to search the nearby waters, the Mexican Navy and the United States Coast Guard were contacted. However, they were likewise unable to locate Coriam. Rebecca's father, Mike Coriam, claims that Disney ignored protocol and didn't circle the ship to search for his daughter, and he also claims that the personnel from the Navy and Coast Guard were likely searching the wrong region of the sea since they were given the wrong coordinates. The nation where the ship was registered, in this case the tax haven of the Bahamas, was given jurisdiction over the matter under the Flags of Convenience system. Disney got in touch with the Royal Bahamas Police Force to launch an investigation 3 days after Coriam vanished. In response, the Royal Bahamas Police Force assigned Superintendent Paul Roll, one of its detectives, to the case, and Disney arranged for him to be flown out to Los Angeles on a private plane. When the Wonder came back into port, he spent a day on board questioning 6 of the 950 personnel, but none of the more than 2,000 passengers. Disney flew out Rebecca's parents, Mike and Anne Coriam, to meet with the detective and ship's captain in Los Angeles following several days of stalled communication. Regarding their daughter who went missing, the family received Disney-style treatment. Anne said that Disney staged everything, saying that passengers exited at the front of the boat and they were driven there in a car with blacked-out windows. They led them into a room where they played Rebecca's CCTV footage, which mostly showed her in good health. The captain of the ship gave the family his assessment of their daughter's destiny while they were on board, and he clarified that it was most likely a stray wave that had carried Rebecca off of Deck 5. Deck 5, which is right in front of the ship's bridge and is surrounded by walls that rise to a height of more than 6 feet, was shown to Mike and Anne. After that, they were shown a sandal that had reportedly belonged to Rebecca and been found on Deck 5 when they were brought to the crew quarters and Rebecca's cabin. The Coriams watched the Disney Wonder depart dock for its next cruise the following day from land. Disney thought the heartbreaking issue should be resolved, and at a ceremony attended by part of the ship's crew, flowers were placed on the spot of the alleged rogue wave mishap on Deck 5, despite the fact that the Royal Bahamas Police Force case is still under investigation. The Coriams recruited Scotland Yard specialist Roy Ram as a private investigator after being dissatisfied with Disney's explanation for their daughter's disappearance. They also enlisted the assistance of Chester MP Chris Matheson and former Deputy Prime Minister Lord Prescott. What they discovered outside of the formal investigation has unsettling ramifications for Rebecca Coriam's potential future. According to Disney's official explanation, Rebecca was swept off Deck 5 by a rogue wave that happened on March 22nd, sometime between 6 and 9 in the morning. However, there are a lot of contradictions in this story. One is that, based on Ram's account, there is no indication of stormy weather in the weather or ocean conditions near Puerto Vallarta, where the ship was located, much less a rogue wave that would need to be about 100 feet high to sweep a person over the 6-foot walls surrounding Deck 5 and overboard. The CCTV footage of Rebecca conversing on an internal phone line at the time of her last known sighting is the main physical piece of evidence in Rebecca's disappearance. Ram's research revealed that the location and timing of the CCTV film had been chopped out. Disney claims that the CCTV film was taken indoors on Deck 5, not far from the location where Rebecca is said to have been swept overboard. After seeing the undoctored copy, Ram and the other investigators discovered that the tape was really shot on Deck 1, not near the location of Rebecca's purported accidental disappearance. The family has often been denied copies of this footage. A prominent tangible piece of evidence supplied by Disney involved a purportedly found sandal on Deck 5, allegedly belonging to Rebecca. However, family and crew members maintained that the sandal was the incorrect size and not in Rebecca's design, and it bore the name and cabin number of someone else entirely. Investigative writer John Ronson of The Guardian boarded the Wonder a few months after Rebecca vanished in an effort to unravel the events surrounding the Coriam incident. Upon interviewing team members, he discovered dubious and possibly malevolent motives underlying Disney's justification for the Coriam case. A crew member revealed that Disney is well aware of the events that transpired and said that everywhere you look, CCTV is installed. The tape is owned by Disney. Ronson was asked about Rebecca, and one of the crew members said that they don't know anything about it and that it did not occur, adding that they said this is the response they are forced to provide. Rebecca was characterized as happy-go-lucky and energetic by her English relatives and acquaintances. A staff member claimed that Disney wouldn't hire you if you weren't that sort of person, therefore working there required a generally upbeat outlook. However, Rebecca's close friends and fellow crew members on the ship present a more complex picture of her than her parents and the media do. When questioned about her, one of the crew members characterized Rebecca as a lovely girl with underlying sadness. Tracy Medley, a co-worker on the Wonder and Rebecca's partner, spoke forward about the events. Back in 2017, she stated that she and Rebecca had been involved romantically with Medley's boyfriend. She claims that in the weeks before, Rebecca had been inconsolable over their fiery and passionate night together. Rebecca's normally upbeat disposition may have been thrown off by the surprise of having to share her partner with a male friend, and looking back, Medley believes that Rebecca wanted to leave the ship and her life behind, and climbed over the 6-foot railings of Deck 5 to jump into the ocean. However, English friends and family have denied that Rebecca would have done this. Crew members, friends, family, and law enforcement officials all testified that Rebecca Coriam's case involved a badly handled investigation. It is objectively difficult to be satisfied with the quality of police work done when there are just 6 officially documented interviews, suppressed evidence, and no forensic investigation. One of Rebecca's closest friends, and the last person on board to see her, gave the BBC his perspective. He said that he never talked to any security or police at all, and added that it is offensive to refer to this as an investigation. A torn pair of shorts was discovered by investigator Ram in 2016 among Rebecca's surviving cabin personal belongings, and this indicated to him and other law enforcement that there had been indications of a struggle prior to her disappearance. The Coriam family discovered Rebecca had changed her Facebook login, and there had been action on her bank account some months after she vanished. MP Matheson stated that he believes there's sufficient evidence to indicate that something sinister may have taken place. Friends and relatives are still looking for answers. The disappearance of Annette Misner. Annette Misner invited her parents and daughter to go on a complimentary 9-day carnival cruise to the Mexican Riviera after winning a contest. However, on December 4, 2004, just before she was meant to meet her parents for bingo, Misner vanished, and strange evidence was discovered by witnesses. According to news outlets, Misner sang a Britney Spears song at karaoke with her kid before making her way to the ship's casino. Misner intended to arrive before the bingo game began at 10 in the evening in order to secure a good seat. However, she did not appear. A crew member also stated over the intercom that they had located the Wisconsin woman's handbag next to a railing on the lower deck, just as her worried parents were beginning to look for her. When Misner went outside, a fellow passenger reportedly saw her purse on the ground. He also saw, quite unsettlingly, that a piece of paper had been placed over the neighboring surveillance camera. The passenger remarked that a lot of people have been saying it's a rumor, but added that it's not hearsay. They personally witnessed it. According to news outlets, a Navy ship and a Coast Guard aircraft searched the seas for Misner for 16 hours without finding the missing 37-year-old. Her spouse disagreed, speculating that Misner may have been shoved or may have fallen from the ship unintentionally. Annette Misner is still missing today. The mysterious disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley. 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley sailed on Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas with her brother and parents on March 21, 1998. After a cold winter, they were excited about a tropical family holiday. However, Bradley disappeared a few days later as the ship made its way towards Curaçao, a Dutch Caribbean island. Bradley and her brother supposedly danced at the ship's club for most of the evening. Bradley and a few of the band members grabbed drinks after the performance. Alistair Douglas, one of them, spent some time having fun with Bradley before heading back to the staff cabins at around 1 a.m. He claimed that it was the last time he had seen her. Then, Bradley and her brother went back to their family cabin, where she went out on the balcony to relax in a deck chair, and he went to bed. Around 5:30 in the morning, her father spotted her there. Nevertheless, she vanished 30 minutes later. Bradley appeared to have left behind nothing, not even her sandals. According to a later story, at around 6 in the morning, someone saw Bradley walking to the top deck of the ship. However, the family could find no sign of her when they searched that area, as well as other public spaces on the ship. The Bradley family pleaded with the cruise liner to postpone its scheduled docking, certain that something terrible had to have occurred. According to them, no one was to leave the ship until a thorough search could be conducted. The crew declined, as they didn't want to alert other travelers to a young woman's disappearance. They even declined to upload any pictures, asking people to look out for her. Thus, the ship docked on time, and Amy Lynn Bradley vanished from view. The most straightforward interpretation is that Bradley went overboard and disappeared under the waves. However, the ship was close to shore, and Bradley was not only a certified lifeguard, but also a superb swimmer. But as of right now, there is no proof that she had fallen into the water. There have been other reported sightings of Bradley throughout the Caribbean in the decades following her disappearance. Even a picture of a lady who appeared to be Bradley was supplied to her parents, and this caused some to suggest that she had been taken by someone who was on the ship. However, the photographs have not been proven to be Bradley. Even after more than 25 years, officials are still no closer to cracking this perplexing case than they were back in 1998. The disappearance of George Allen Smith IV. In the summer of 2005, the idyllic setting of a luxury cruise ship became the backdrop for a chilling mystery that would captivate the world's attention: the disappearance of George Allen Smith. What began as a dream vacation for the newlywed couple turned into a nightmare, as George vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and speculation that continues to haunt investigators and loved ones to this day. George Allen Smith, a charismatic and outgoing 26-year-old from Greenwich, Connecticut, embarked on a Mediterranean honeymoon cruise with his beautiful bride, Jennifer Hagel Smith, in July 2005. The couple, described as deeply in love and full of life, seemed destined for a future filled with happiness and adventure. However, fate had other plans in store for them. When he embarked on his honeymoon with Jennifer, the love of his life, on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship, George Allen Smith was just 26 years old. The newlywed groom vanished overboard as soon as their cruise, the Brilliance of the Seas, was sailing in waters between Greece and Turkey. The captain thinks it was a harmless mishap. However, Smith's parents firmly feel that this was not an accident and that George Allen Smith's life was taken from him. They immediately put up a $100,000 prize for information leading to the identity of the culprit. However, before a formal announcement was made, further information and circumstances needed to be taken into account. It seems that there had been a lot of drinking and gambling going on in the casino the night before the disaster, and it was only part of the tale. That same evening, a guest who was staying next door to Smith claimed to have overheard heated arguments taking place on his balcony. A different traveller reported hearing furniture shifting. Jennifer was discovered unconscious in the corridor a short while later. Other passengers took pictures early in the morning of what they thought were mysterious stains on the lifeboat canopy below the balcony. However, until the Smith family attorney saw a tape including 4 guys, nothing was particularly worth incriminating. The men made comments about Smith's passing and flash signs as they moved the camera around. However, none of the men were ever prosecuted, and it is hardly unexpected that they deny any connection to the matter. To the family's dismay, the FBI in Connecticut abandoned the case, concluding that it was simply an unfortunate accident. The idea that Jennifer, who had remarried after the disaster, would be receiving all of Smith's goods infuriated the family even more. They vented their rage on Facebook, posting that she was attempting to prevent them from learning the truth about what had transpired that day, and that no one knew where she was when he disappeared. Her accusations were never investigated. We are still in the dark about what transpired on that day, years after it happened. The vanishing of Marian Carver. Marian Carver, an investment banker and poet with red hair who was 40 years old, sailed on Royal Caribbean's celebrity cruise ship Mercury in August 2004. She set out on a 7-day trip to Alaska, departing from Seattle, Washington. Domingo Montero, her steward, observed that she was kind, carefree, and excited about the voyage. She informed him she didn't want to go to the dining room, but that she would be going upstairs later. The next night, when she expressed the same desire, he recommended getting room service, and upon her request, brought her 2 sandwiches. Marian's bed had not been made when Montero went to check on her cabin the next morning. All of her possessions, including her 1 pair of shoes, had been abandoned, along with a large gratuity and a manila envelope with unknown contents. He immediately filed a missing persons report and kept doing so for the next 5 days of the cruise, until his boss told him to do his job and forget it. Upon the conclusion of the voyage, Montero expressed his worries to his supervisor once more, and he was instructed to pack up Marian's personal items and bring them to his office. Her cabin was not guarded, and nobody gathered proof. With the exception of her clothes, which he immediately gave to a charity, the supervisor placed her possessions in his own locker. Nobody called the family or made a police report. After Marian went missing for 5 weeks, Royal Caribbean eventually did get in contact with the FBI. When Marian's 13-year-old daughter, who lived with her father, was unable to get in touch with her mother over the phone, she became worried. She decided to call Marian's father, Kendall Carver, who, upon realizing he was unable to reach his daughter, reported her missing to the Cambridge, Massachusetts police. The cops found credit card purchases for the round-trip airfare to Seattle and the Alaskan cruise when they looked through her bank records. Marian's cruise was unexpected, but neither her friends nor family knew that she had taken a vacation. Marian was self-sufficient, single, and had a history of taking separate vacations to clear her head without telling anyone. It took Carver 3 days to receive a response from Royal Caribbean when he inquired about whether his daughter had been on board. She had been absent for 26 days by now, and he was informed by a risk management manager for the cruise line that no alarm had been set out following his daughter's disappearance because it was normal for individuals to abruptly change their rooms without warning and for them to leave their stuff behind. In multiple testimony and media reports, the father expressed that he encountered obstacles in his quest for information regarding his daughter's whereabouts. He was informed that any video captured by the ship's security cameras is instantly deleted after just 3 days. The cruise operator declined to disclose Marian's steward's name and insisted they had received no reports regarding his daughter while on the trip. Carver became frustrated by this and decided to hire one of the biggest private detective agencies in the nation, but this just raised more questions than it did answers. The investigator was given permission to enter the ship, but they were not allowed to talk to any of the crew members or the security guard. He did mention that Marian's lodging was only a short stroll from an observation platform situated 100 feet above the waterline. She might have been pushed or even jumped off this deck with ease. After Carver engaged attorneys from Massachusetts and Florida to investigate the matter, 2 employees of the cruise line provided telephone depositions in January of 2005. Carver became even more upset upon learning that a cruise company supervisor had dismissed her steward's concerns, and this was the first time he had heard that someone had taken an interest in his daughter. Before the FBI could talk with the supervisor who had ignored the steward's concerns, he was sacked and escorted off the ship. Though many people think he got employment on a different ship, he has never been identified or discovered. Along with the money Marian had left in her room and the manila envelope, he vanished along with other personal items. Ultimately, feeling he had no other choice, Carver sued Royal Caribbean. He finally saw a copy of the security report before the matter went to trial in August 2005, and it was then that he realized there had been a cover-up. In addition, he discovered that he had been misled about the surveillance footage, which had been stored for a month rather than 3 days. When he first got in touch with them, there should have been video from when his daughter vanished. With reference to Marian's emotional problems, the cruise line made an official statement to the media during the trial. Carver eventually prevailed in his lawsuit, but it was a meaningless result. Despite spending $75,000 on detectives and attorneys, he was still unaware of his daughter's whereabouts and thought she had passed away. He passed away in December 2019 without ever learning Marian's fate. In order to save others the anguish and suffering he had experienced, Carver established International Cruise Victims, a support and advocacy organization, in 2006. The disappearance of Aaron Hugh. After graduating from London's theatre school, the actor scored a lucrative role as a performer on a Royal Caribbean ship, where he was cast in the Grease production. However, Hugh disappeared 267 miles off the coast of Puerto Rico on Christmas Day, 2018. News outlets have claimed that at around 4 a.m, Hugh was last seen on CCTV entering Deck 5, which was home to several stores and bars. The cruise ship conducted a thorough search for him after he failed to arrive for work that day. However, the news outlets report that during a 2-day search that encompassed 3,700 square miles, no results were found. Despite the upbeat pictures he frequently shared, some people noticed that Hugh's social media posts after his disappearance from the cruise ship hinted that he was internally struggling. A week before his disappearance, he posted something along the lines of, "People live fake lives on social media." Sadly, Aaron Hugh's disappearance from this list of cruise ship disappearances was never solved. The mystery of the SS Waratah. The SS Waratah stands as one of the most enduring maritime mysteries of the 20th century, a tale that continues to captivate and perplex investigators and enthusiasts alike. Launched in 1908, the SS Waratah was a luxury passenger steamship built by the Blue Anchor Line, intended to serve the bustling trade routes between Europe and Australia. Back in September 1913, Australian explorer Douglas Mawson reported that he had made a strange discovery while in Antarctica. The Australian Antarctic Expedition's then leader reported seeing the masts and top funnel of a big steamer projecting from snow close to a narrow entrance that led to a bay on the southern continent in a jumbled telegraph message. The telegram stated that even though Mawson's group was unable to reach the damaged ship, they had found a lifebuoy encrusted in ice with the name Waratah on it. The newspapers of the time that had picked up on the story speculated that Mawson might have unravelled one of the most puzzling maritime mysteries of the early 20th century, the whereabouts of a passenger liner that vanished off the coast of South Africa at the end of July 1909, while on a voyage from Sydney to London. The message stated that not only had the Waratah been discovered undamaged, but also that some of her 2,011 passengers and crew might amazingly still be alive. According to Captain John Mackay, the discovery of the ship, thousands of miles south of its last known location, was completely plausible. However, Mawson said nothing more about this supposed discovery, and as it turned out, the telegram was a journalistic prank sent by editors at the Daily Mail to investigate the idea that their rival in Brisbane was stealing its news articles. Built in 1908 for the Danish shipping line Blue Anchor, the medium-sized passenger and cargo steamer SS Waratah was built by Clyde shipbuilders Barclay Curle. Built with 8 staterooms and space for up to 128 first-class passengers on her top decks, the ship was intended to transport a substantial load, mostly frozen meat, dairy goods, and metal ores. On her inaugural trip, the Waratah carried 689 steerage and 67 first-class passengers, sailing from London in November 1908 and arriving in Sydney in January 1909. The journey out and the journey back were uneventful, with the exception of a little but problematic fire in a coal bunker. She went missing during the second voyage's return leg. On June 26, 1909, she departed Sydney with the intention of travelling to Europe via stops in Melbourne, Adelaide, Durban, and Cape Town. She was carrying over 7,000 bars of bullion, Only 211 passengers and crew members were on board when she departed Durban on July 26th in the evening. The Wild Coast is the name given to the untamed and hazardous eastern coast of South Africa, which stretches between Durban and Cape Town. The SS Waratah vanished off the rugged Wild Coast more than a century ago, and since then, this vessel has been referred to as Australia's Titanic. The Titanic capsized far later than the SS Waratah. This 500-foot steamer ship, which weighed about 10,000 tons, vanished in July 1909 while returning from Australia via Cape Town. All 211 passengers and the crew perished along with her somewhere in the Indian Ocean. There were no survivors. One of the greatest maritime mysteries in history is the apparent complete disappearance of the ship, and there has never been a single piece of the ship found to this day. According to some theories, the ship may have been hit by an enormous freak wave, flipped over and submerged under the waters. Some claim it simply disappeared. Many theories have been put up in the more than a century since its disappearance to try and explain its tragic path. According to the communication reports from that day, on July 28, 1909, the ship made a halt in Durban before continuing on its way to London along the Transkei Wild Coast. This liner would have stopped at Cape Town en route before continuing on its journey. More correspondence from the archives was discovered in July 1971, and it stated that the Waratah vanished in what would become one of the most bewildering nautical mysteries of all time, after two people disembarked in Durban, one to look for work and the other because he had a dream the ship would sink. Two other ships spotted it along the Transkei Wild Coast. The waters at Port St John's, between Durban and East London, can be a stormy and turbulent rocky coast with ocean surges reaching anywhere from 60 to 70 feet high in inclement weather. These conditions are common for the area and make for challenging rescue operations, hence the term Wild Coast. Since the sinking of the SS Waratah, other ships have been lost to choppy seas off the shore. According to experts, the surrounding waterways are considered hazardous and are indicated as such on shipping maps. Theories for this catastrophe range from the ship's heating system blowing up to her being swept away by the powerful current and the stormy weather leaving her drifting aimlessly. She might have finally drifted towards the Antarctic Circle from the southern African coastline for any of these reasons. The mysterious disappearance of Royal Marine Alan Addis. The disappearance of Royal Marine Alan Addis is a haunting mystery that has puzzled investigators and gripped the public's imagination for decades. Addis was one of 3 members of a team that had travelled to the isolated community of North Arm in Lafonia on East Falkland, some 90 miles, or 140 kilometres from Stanley, to retrieve the equipment for a Falkland Islands Defence Force unit in North Arm following a week-long training session. They were then scheduled to proceed to Fitzroy to train volunteers for the Falkland Islands Defence Force there. Addis and the other Marines went to an evening gathering with 40 villagers in the village hall, which served as a social club, on August 8th. Addis's co-workers said that they last saw him at around 1:30 in the morning. The Marines departed the gathering at separate times in groups of 1 or 2, heading to different nearby residences. The remainder of the team returned to Stanley on the steamer MV Forest early the next morning. Addis was reported missing 30 minutes after they sailed. At first, it was thought that Addis had either gone overboard or had unintentionally stepped off a jetty into the chilly South Atlantic seas in the Bay of Harbours. The word that Alan had gone from patrol reached his mother, Anne Addis, at her residence in England. Police came to see her the next day to tell her that her son had probably gone overboard in an accident. Other theories were floated over the next 3 weeks, one of which was that Addis had become lost and gone out into the hinterland of the Falklands, where he might have passed away due to the cold. The search for the missing Marine was eventually called off when it was unsuccessful in turning up any leads. The search was conducted by air, sea and divers underwater around the islands and surrounding waters. An open verdict on the Falklands was returned by an inquest later that year. Anne Addis took a military transport to the Falklands in November 1981 to conduct her own inquiries. She ordered the Ministry of Defence to launch a fresh inquiry, headed by the Special Inquiry Branch of the Royal Military Police, after growing increasingly certain that foul play was involved. She maintained that the island's meagre police force, which at the time consisted of 1 full-time constable and a few part-timers, was not up to the task of conducting an investigation of this nature compared to the Special Inquiry Branch's people, training, and expertise. An Special Inquiry Branch officer was sent to the Falklands in response, but Mrs. Addis was not shown his final report because it was confidential. When the Argentine military invaded and took control of the islands in April of the following year, the situation became even more problematic. Following that, on June 14, 1982, the Argentines submitted and British forces retook the islands in what became known as the Falklands War between the United Kingdom and Argentina. The local police files pertaining to the Addis case were lost during the fight, and it's possible that the authorities in the Falklands deleted them on purpose to keep information regarding British military operations on the islands out of the hands of the Argentines. Mrs. Addis kept in touch with several Falklanders and persisted in pressuring British and Falklands officials to conduct a fresh investigation in the years after the conflict. She heard whispers in 1993 of an islander boasting of their role in Alan's disappearance during an overheard conversation in a Falklands pub. The now enlarged, renamed Royal Falkland Islands Police received this information. By then, the Royal Falkland Islands Police had reopened its inquiry so they could rule out that specific rumour. Nevertheless, they came to the conclusion that Addis had been taken out and named 4 islanders from the area as the main suspects. A team of detectives left the UK in 1995 after the Royal Falkland Islands Police entrusted the investigation to Devon and Cornwall Police due to an impasse. 4 Falklands men were apprehended by officials from the Devon and Cornwall Police and the Royal Falkland Islands Police in September of that year during an operation that used helicopters from the Royal Air Force installation at RAF Mount Pleasant. Later, the men were freed without facing any charges. A specialised UK team attempted to find Addis in 1997. Professor John Hunter, a forensic archaeologist from the University of Birmingham and the leader of the prestigious Forensic Search and Advisory Group, which was established to counsel and support law enforcement in locating human remains, was among the group members. Along with specialists in ground-penetrating radar, Sergeant Mick Swindles of Lancashire Police led a particularly trained sniffer dog on the squad. The team looked at over 54 places, but they were unable to locate Addis. The television production company Lion Films shot the inquiry for a 1998 British television documentary that was a part of the Channel 4 series Equinox. The series documented conversations with Addis's mother, his old comrades, and other Falklanders, in addition to tracking the team's efforts to locate his remains. Interviews with 2 of the men detained after the initial investigation in 1995 were part of it. Both individuals vehemently denied having anything to do with Addis's disappearance. A lot of persistent rumours that had been going around for a while were taken into consideration by the programme. The first of these said that Addis had been taken out because he had been discovered with a local landowner's wife. The landowner, who was questioned by the show's producers, denied the theory, even though he acknowledged having heard of such a tale. 2 weeks after Addis vanished, there was a second report about the passing of a local shepherd named Johnny Biggs, who was involved in a fire at a bunkhouse in the North Arm. Falklanders expressed their concerns in the broadcast that the man had been taken out and that the fire had been caused on purpose to hide his identity rather than genuinely passing away in the fire. There was talk of a possible connection between the Addis case and his passing, given that it happened just before he was supposed to testify before the Board of Inquiry and that the fire investigation had certain flaws. Local rumours, as reported by the British Broadcasting Company, said that the man had been removed to avoid his testifying as he knew Addis's whereabouts, maybe by listening in on a conversation that linked another islander to the disappearance. A team from the Metropolitan Police went to the Falklands in December 2010 to carry out additional searches. This came about as a result of a tip from a former Falklands resident who sent Anne Addis details about Alan's location. A follow-up expedition to the islands was planned, despite the fact that nothing was discovered. It was reported that additional clues had been discovered during the search, and there was additional evidence that the head of the Royal Falkland Islands Police had made the unprecedented move of providing police protection to anyone willing to come forward with intelligence.